Arden had always believed that life would somehow figure itself out for him. He was not careless in the way people usually imagine. He had dreams, big ones, in fact. He often pictured himself standing at the peak of success, admired, respected, and fulfilled. But those dreams lived only in his mind, floating like clouds that never brought rain. Every morning, he woke up with a vague intention to start fresh, yet by the end of the day, nothing had changed. His hours slipped away unnoticed, buried under distractions, excuses, and a quiet, persistent voice that whispered, "You can do it later." Later became his favorite lie. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Arden developed a pattern, sleeping late, waking without purpose, drifting from one task to another without completing anything meaningful. He blamed circumstances at first. Maybe he needed the right opportunity. Maybe he needed motivation. Maybe he just hadn't found his moment yet. But deep down, he knew the truth he was trying to avoid. He lacked discipline. It wasn't obvious at the beginning. In fact, it was invisible, like a slow leak in a tire. He still moved forward, but with less energy, less direction, and less control. His confidence began to erode. Small promises he made to himself, "I'll wake up early tomorrow, I'll focus today, I'll stop wasting time," were broken so often that his own words stopped meaning anything to him. One evening, Arden sat alone in his dimly lit room. The silence felt heavier than usual. Around him were unfinished notebooks, half-read books, and ideas scribbled on loose pages, reminders of everything he had started but never finished. The room looked like his mind, cluttered, chaotic, and restless. He picked up one of the notebooks and flipped through it. The first page was filled with energy, goals written in bold letters, underlined with determination. But as he turned the pages, the handwriting faded, the entries became fewer, until finally, there was nothing. Blank pages. Endless blank pages. Arden closed the notebook slowly. Something inside him shifted, not dramatically, not loudly, but enough to make him uncomfortable. For the first time, he didn't blame the world. He didn't blame luck or timing. He blamed himself. Not with anger, but with clarity. He realized that his life wasn't stuck because of a lack of talent or opportunity. It was stuck because he had no structure, no consistency, no discipline to carry him forward when motivation disappeared. And motivation always disappeared. That night, Arden couldn't sleep. Thoughts raced through his mind like a storm. He thought about the person he wanted to become and the person he had been living as. The gap between them felt enormous, almost impossible to bridge. But then a simple question formed in his mind: what if the gap isn't crossed in one leap, but in small, repeated steps? The idea lingered. The next morning, something unusual happened. Arden woke up early. Not because he felt inspired. Not because he suddenly became a different person. In fact, he felt tired, heavy, and slightly irritated. His body wanted to go back to sleep. His mind argued with him, offering the same old excuse, just 5 more minutes. But this time, he didn't listen. He sat up. That small act, simple, almost insignificant, felt like a quiet rebellion against his old self. He didn't make a grand plan. He didn't try to change everything at once. Instead, he chose one thing. Just one. He decided that for that day, he would do a single task with complete focus. No distractions, no delays, no excuses. At first, it felt unnatural. His mind wandered constantly. He reached for his phone without thinking. He found himself staring at nothing, lost in thought. Discipline, he realized, wasn't about perfection. It was about returning, again and again, to what mattered. Every time he drifted, he pulled himself back. Again. And again. And again. It was exhausting. By the end of the day, Arden hadn't done anything extraordinary. But something had changed. For the first time in a long while, he felt a quiet sense of control. Not over his entire life, but over a small part of it. And that was enough. Days passed, and Arden continued this practice. He didn't aim for dramatic transformations. He focused on consistency. Waking up at the same time. Completing one important task. Keeping small promises to himself. It wasn't easy. Some days, he failed. He overslept. He got distracted. He fell back into old habits. But instead of giving up, he did something different. He started again. There was no dramatic restart, no emotional speech, no guilt-filled regret. Just a simple decision: try again tomorrow. Over time, something remarkable began to happen. The small actions started to build momentum. Waking up early became slightly easier. Focusing became less painful. Completing tasks became more satisfying. The chaos that once filled his days began to fade, replaced by a growing sense of order. Arden noticed the changes not just in his routine, but in his mindset. He no longer waited to feel motivated. He acted first. And in acting, he discovered something powerful: discipline wasn't something you felt. It was something you did, especially when you didn't feel like it. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Arden stepped outside. The air was cool, and the sky was painted with soft shades of orange and purple. He stood there quietly, reflecting on the past few weeks. Nothing in his life had dramatically changed. He wasn't suddenly successful. He hadn't achieved his biggest dreams. But for the first time, he felt something far more important. He felt in control. The chaos that once defined him was no longer his identity. It was something he had begun to overcome. And as he stood there, watching the fading light, he realized a truth that would guide him moving forward: discipline doesn't change your life overnight, but it changes the direction of your life, one day at a time. Arden took a deep breath. This was only the beginning. Arden quickly learned that starting was not the hardest part. Continuing was. The first few days of discipline had felt new, almost refreshing in a strange way. There was a sense of quiet pride in waking up early, in choosing focus over distraction, in doing what needed to be done even when it felt uncomfortable. But as days turned into weeks, the novelty faded. What once felt like progress now felt like pressure. Every morning became a battlefield. The alarm would ring, and instantly, the war would begin. His mind would whisper, "You deserve rest, you worked hard yesterday, just today, you can take a break." The excuses sounded reasonable, almost comforting. They didn't feel like lies. They felt like relief. And that was what made them dangerous. Arden sat on the edge of his bed one morning, staring at the floor, exhausted before the day had even begun. He realized something unsettling: discipline wasn't fighting the world. It was fighting himself. There were no external enemies. No one was stopping him from improving his life. The resistance came from within: his habits, his comfort zone, his desire for ease. It was like carrying an invisible weight that no one else could see. Some days, the weight felt unbearable. One afternoon, Arden gave in. He told himself he would just take a short break. 1 hour of doing nothing, just to relax. But 1 hour turned into 3. 3 turned into the entire day. By nightfall, he had slipped back into his old routine, scrolling endlessly, avoiding responsibility, letting time disappear without purpose. When he finally looked at the clock, a familiar feeling hit him. Disappointment. Not loud or dramatic, but quiet and heavy. The kind that settles deep inside your chest and refuses to leave. Arden leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes. For a moment, he felt like everything he had built over the past weeks had been destroyed in a single day. The old thought returned: maybe I'm just not that kind of person. It was a dangerous thought, one that could undo everything. But this time, something inside him resisted. He opened his eyes and sat up straight. The failure was real, but so was the progress he had made. One bad day didn't erase the effort of many. For the first time, Arden didn't let failure define him. Instead, he studied it. He asked himself questions he had never asked before. Why did he give in? What triggered the distraction? What made the excuses so convincing? And slowly, he began to understand. It wasn't about laziness. It was about discomfort. Discipline forced him to face things he had been avoiding: effort, boredom, uncertainty, and sometimes even self-doubt. Distractions weren't the problem, they were the escape. The real challenge was learning to stay present even when things felt difficult. That realization changed something. The next day, Arden didn't try to be perfect. He didn't expect the day to be easy. Instead, he prepared for the resistance. When the alarm rang, he didn't argue with his thoughts. He didn't negotiate. He simply moved. Action before emotion. It became his new rule. As the days went on, Arden began to notice patterns in his behavior. The urge to quit always came at predictable moments: when a task became boring, when progress felt slow, when results didn't appear quickly. His mind craved instant reward, but discipline demanded patience. And patience was painful. There were moments when Arden felt like nothing was changing. He was putting in the effort, staying consistent, showing up every day, yet the results were invisible. It felt like pushing against a wall that refused to move. Doubt crept in again. What's the point of all this? The question echoed in his mind during long, quiet evenings. He watched others who seemed to succeed effortlessly, while he struggled with something as basic as staying consistent. It didn't seem fair. But deep down, he knew something important. What looked effortless on the outside was often built on invisible discipline. So he kept going. Not because he felt confident, but because he refused to go back to who he used to be. One evening, Arden found himself staring at his reflection in the mirror. For a moment, he didn't recognize the person looking back at him. Not because he had physically changed, but because something in his eyes was different. There was focus. There was intention. There was a quiet strength that hadn't been there before. It wasn't dramatic, but it was real. Discipline was beginning to shape him, not just his actions, but his identity. He was no longer someone who wanted to change. He was someone who was changing. Still, the journey was far from easy. There were days when everything felt heavy. Days when even the smallest task seemed overwhelming. Days when his mind was louder than his will. But instead of collapsing under the pressure, Arden learned to simplify. On the hardest days, he told himself one thing: just don't quit today. That was it. No big goals. No long lists. Just one rule: keep going. Sometimes, discipline meant doing less, but doing it consistently. It meant showing up even when the effort was small. It meant refusing to let a bad moment turn into a bad day, or a bad day into a bad life. Slowly, the internal war began to shift. The voice that once told him to quit grew weaker. The voice that pushed him forward grew stronger. It didn't happen overnight. It happened through repetition, through hundreds of small decisions made daily. Arden began to trust himself again. That was perhaps the most powerful change of all. Before, he couldn't rely on his own promises. Now, when he said he would do something, he did it. That trust built confidence, and that confidence created momentum. His life was still far from perfect. He still struggled. He still faced resistance. He still had moments of doubt. But he was no longer controlled by them. He had learned something most people never fully understand: discipline is not about being unbreakable. It's about refusing to stay broken. One night, as Arden sat by his window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance, he reflected on how far he had come. The chaos that once consumed him had been replaced by structure. The confusion had been replaced by clarity. And yet, he knew this was only the middle of the journey. Because discipline doesn't just build you. It tests you. As he closed his eyes, a quiet thought settled in his mind: the real challenge isn't starting or continuing, it's staying consistent when life pushes back. Arden didn't know it yet, but the next phase of his journey would demand more from him than ever before. More strength. More patience. More discipline. And this time, the challenge wouldn't come from within alone. It would come from the world around him. There comes a point in every journey where the struggle is no longer just internal. For Arden, that moment arrived quietly, but its impact was anything but small. Up until now, his greatest battles had been within himself, his habits, his distractions, his excuses. But as his discipline grew stronger, life around him began to change in ways he didn't expect. With that change came pressure, real, external pressure that tested everything he had built so far. It started with responsibility. Opportunities, the very things Arden once wished for, began to appear. Tasks that required focus, consistency, and reliability were now part of his daily life. People began to trust him more. Expectations grew. And while this was a sign of progress, it also brought a new kind of weight. This wasn't the weight of laziness anymore. This was the weight of accountability. Arden could no longer afford to drift through his days. Others depended on him now, and failure didn't just affect him, it affected everything around him. The stakes were higher, and for the first time, discipline wasn't just a personal choice. It was a necessity. At first, he welcomed the challenge. It felt like proof that he was moving forward. But soon, the pressure began to build. The days became longer, the tasks more demanding, and the margin for error smaller. There was less room to pause, less time to recover. And then, life did what it always does. It became unpredictable. Unexpected problems began to appear, small at first, then larger. Plans didn't go as expected. Efforts didn't always lead to results. Situations arose that Arden couldn't control, no matter how disciplined he tried to be. It frustrated him. Deeply, he had believed, even if only subconsciously, that discipline would make everything easier. That if he just stayed consistent, life would start aligning perfectly. But now he saw the truth. Discipline doesn't remove obstacles. It prepares you to face them. One evening, after a particularly exhausting day, Arden sat alone, staring at his unfinished work. His mind was overwhelmed. No matter how much effort he put in, it felt like there was always more to do, more to fix, more to handle. For a moment, he felt that old feeling creeping back in. The urge to escape. To stop trying. To go back to the comfort of doing nothing, where expectations didn't exist and failure didn't hurt. The thought lingered longer than usual. He closed his eyes, leaning back in his chair, and for the first time in a while, he questioned everything again. What if this is too much? What if I can't handle it? The room was silent, but his mind was loud. And then, something shifted. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but enough to bring him back. He realized that this moment, this exact feeling of pressure and doubt, was the true test of everything he had been building. Discipline wasn't meant for easy days. It was built for days like this, days when quitting felt justified, when giving up seemed reasonable. Arden sat up slowly. He didn't try to fix everything at once. He didn't rush to complete every task or solve every problem. Instead, he returned to something simple, something that had guided him from the beginning. One step. Just one. He picked the most important task in front of him and began. His mind still felt heavy. The pressure didn't disappear. But he moved anyway. Action before emotion. The same rule. As minutes turned into hours, something interesting happened. The overwhelming chaos in his mind began to settle. Not because everything was solved, but because he was no longer standing still. He was moving through it. And movement changed everything. Days like that became more frequent. Life didn't slow down. In fact, it became even more demanding. There were moments of failure, moments when despite his best efforts, things didn't go his way. There were times when people doubted him, when circumstances worked against him, when the path forward seemed unclear. But Arden was no longer the same person who would collapse under that weight. He had built something stronger than motivation. He had built resilience. There was one particular day that tested him more than any other. It started like any normal day, but quickly spiraled out of control. Plans fell apart. Deadlines tightened. Problems stacked on top of each other until it felt like everything was slipping out of his hands. No matter where he turned, there was pressure waiting. By evening, he was exhausted, physically, mentally, and emotionally. He stepped outside, needing air, needing space, needing a moment to breathe. The sky was dark, and the world around him was quiet, but inside, everything felt loud and chaotic. He walked aimlessly for a while before stopping under a dim streetlight. For a moment, he allowed himself to feel everything, the frustration, the fatigue, the doubt. He didn't push it away this time. He didn't pretend to be strong. He just stood there, honest with himself. And then, in that quiet moment, a realization came to him. This was the life he had been working toward. Not the struggle, not the pressure, but the growth. This was what growth looked like. Messy. Uncertain. Demanding. If he walked away now, he wouldn't just lose the progress he had made. He would lose the person he was becoming. Arden took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs. He didn't need everything to be perfect. He just needed to keep going. When he returned, nothing had magically changed. The work was still there. The challenges were still waiting. But his mindset was different. He wasn't trying to escape the pressure anymore. He was learning to carry it. That night, he worked with a quiet focus, not rushed, not frantic, but steady. He completed what he could, accepted what he couldn't, and prepared for the next day. And the next day, he showed up again. That became his new definition of discipline. Not perfection. Not endless productivity, but consistency in the face of difficulty. As weeks passed, Arden began to notice something remarkable. The same situations that once overwhelmed him now felt manageable. The same pressure that once broke him now strengthened him. He wasn't avoiding challenges anymore, he was adapting to them. He had become someone who could be relied on. Not because he was the smartest or the most talented, but because he showed up, no matter what. And that made all the difference. One evening, as he sat quietly reflecting, Arden realized something profound. Discipline hadn't just changed his habits, it had changed his identity. He was no longer the person who waited for the right moment. He was the person who created it. He was no longer controlled by his emotions. He was guided by his actions. He was no longer afraid of pressure. He was shaped by it. The world hadn't become easier. He had become stronger. And as he looked ahead, he knew the journey wasn't over. There would be bigger challenges. Greater responsibilities. Higher expectations. But for the first time, he didn't feel intimidated. He felt ready, because he understood something now that he didn't before. Discipline is not just about building a better life, it's about becoming a person who can handle that life. Arden closed his eyes for a moment, a quiet sense of strength settling within him. The chaos was gone. The doubt was quieter. The path was clearer. And ahead of him, waiting patiently, was the final transformation, the version of himself he had been working toward all along. By the time Arden reached this phase of his journey, something inside him had fundamentally changed, but it wasn't loud, and it wasn't obvious to the world. There was no grand moment where everything suddenly made sense. No applause. No instant success. No dramatic transformation that others could easily point to and admire. Instead, it was quiet. Subtle. Deep. The kind of change that happens slowly, beneath the surface, until one day you look back and realize you are no longer the same person you used to be. Arden noticed it in the way he woke up each morning. There was no longer a battle with the alarm. No internal argument. No endless negotiation with his own mind. He simply woke up, stood up, and began his day. Not because it felt good, not because he was always motivated, but because it had become part of who he was. Discipline was no longer something he forced. It was something he lived. The habits that once felt heavy had become natural. The actions that once required effort now flowed with ease. But that didn't mean life had become easier. In many ways, it had become more demanding than ever before. The difference was in how Arden responded. Where he once hesitated, he now acted. Where he once avoided, he now faced. Where he once doubted, he now trusted the process. And that trust had been earned, not given. It came from every early morning he didn't want to wake up for. Every task he completed when he felt like quitting. Every moment he chose growth over comfort. Those small decisions, repeated daily, had built something unshakable within him. One afternoon, Arden found himself revisiting an old place, a quiet corner where he used to sit months ago, surrounded by unfinished ideas and unfulfilled promises. The environment hadn't changed. The walls were the same. The silence felt the same. But he didn't feel the same. He walked slowly, observing everything with a sense of clarity he hadn't possessed before. He picked up an old notebook, the same one filled with bold beginnings and empty endings. For a moment, he just stared at it. Then he opened it. The first pages still carried the energy of his past self, ambitious, hopeful, but inconsistent. As he flipped through the blank pages that once symbolized failure, something unexpected happened. He didn't feel regret. He felt gratitude, because those empty pages were not proof of failure anymore. They were proof of where he started. Arden sat down and began to write again, but this time, it was different. His words weren't driven by emotion or temporary motivation. They were grounded in clarity, shaped by experience, and backed by action. He wasn't writing dreams anymore. He was writing plans. Plans he knew he would follow through on. That was the difference. As time passed, the results of his discipline began to show, not all at once, but gradually, like the steady rise of the sun after a long night. Opportunities expanded. His work improved. His confidence deepened. People began to notice the consistency in him, the reliability, the quiet strength. But what mattered most wasn't what others saw. It was what he felt. There was a sense of peace within him now. Not the kind that comes from an easy life, but the kind that comes from knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. That peace was powerful. It gave him clarity in moments of chaos. It gave him strength in moments of weakness. It gave him direction when the path ahead seemed uncertain. And perhaps most importantly, it gave him freedom. Not freedom from responsibility, but freedom from the version of himself that once held him back. One evening, as Arden stood watching the horizon, he reflected on everything he had been through. The lazy days. The broken promises. The endless cycle of starting and stopping. The internal battles. The moments of doubt. All of it felt distant now, not erased, but transformed. He understood something now that he couldn't see before. Discipline didn't just change his actions. It changed his relationship with himself. Before, he didn't trust himself. His words meant nothing because his actions never followed. But now, when he made a decision, he honored it. When he set a goal, he pursued it. When things became difficult, he didn't run. He stayed. And that changed everything. There was a time when Arden thought success was about achieving something big, something visible, something that would prove his worth to the world. But now, his definition had shifted. Success, he realized, was becoming someone you could rely on, even when no one else was watching. Even when it didn't feel rewarding. Even when it was hard. Especially when it was hard. That realization grounded him in a way nothing else ever had. But life, as always, had one more test waiting. It came unexpectedly. A situation arose that challenged not just his discipline, but his patience, his resilience, and his emotional strength. It was the kind of situation that would have completely overwhelmed the old Arden, the kind that would have sent him back into avoidance and distraction. For a moment, he felt that familiar pressure again. The weight. The doubt. The urge to escape. But this time, something was different. He didn't panic. He didn't freeze. He paused, took a breath, and faced it. Not perfectly. Not effortlessly. But deliberately. He broke the problem down, one step at a time, just as he had learned to do. He focused on what he could control and let go of what he couldn't. He stayed consistent, even when progress felt slow. And slowly, the situation began to resolve. Not because it was easy, but because he didn't give up. When it was over, Arden realized something powerful. The challenge that once would have broken him had now strengthened him. That was the true result of discipline. It didn't make life easier. It made him stronger. As the days turned into months, Arden continued to grow, not just in what he achieved, but in who he became. His mindset evolved. His perspective deepened. He began to see discipline not as a restriction, but as a form of self-respect. It was the way he showed up for his own life. The way he honored his potential. The way he turned intention into reality. And perhaps the most beautiful part of it all was this: he no longer needed to prove anything to anyone. He wasn't chasing validation. He wasn't comparing himself to others. He was focused on one thing: becoming better than he was yesterday. That focus brought a sense of fulfillment that external success never could. One night, as he sat quietly, reflecting on his journey, a thought came to him, simple, yet powerful. If I had waited to feel ready, I would still be waiting. He smiled faintly. Because he knew it was true. Everything he had built came from acting when he didn't feel like it, from showing up when it was hard, from choosing discipline over comfort, again and again. And now, he was living the result of those choices. Not a perfect life, but a meaningful one. A life with direction. A life with purpose. A life he had built, step by step, day by day. Arden stood up and walked forward, not rushing, not hesitating, just moving with quiet confidence. The future was still uncertain. There would still be challenges. There would still be difficult days. But he wasn't afraid of them anymore. Because he carried something within him that could handle it all. Discipline. Not as a tool. Not as a habit. But as a way of life. And as he moved forward, one truth stayed with him, a truth that defined everything he had become: discipline didn't just change his life, it gave him the power to change it, again and again, no matter what came next.